Greetings, soul. Yeah, greetings. What's poppin'? Man, seem like lately I've been tripping walking out here, to record these videos, yo. So I think I might need to look where I'm going while I'm, actually looking into the camera. I get one of those flying drone things, but nonetheless, so I want to talk about, you coming through the matrix, duality, in duality. And so, I told you a couple of videos prior back that God was in duality. So, you know, he's in the you that you don't want to admit. He's in the phrases that you don't want to admit that he or she or it is. So, as for me, I know God to be a he. You know what I'm saying? I see it that way. And sometimes if you're listening close to yourself, sometimes if you're listening close to yourself, God, the power source that gives you messages, sometimes sounds like a she. I always ask females and males when they're talking about hearing and discerning the voice of God within themselves, like, what are you really hearing? Are you hearing you? Which is the voice that sounds like you that gives you clarity. Then are you hearing God? Which sounds like the male Jesus that, you've been given as a father figure. Because if you imagine, as the mind mentalism goes to a father, it always seems to go to the male, the male counterpart, and it may be the masculine and the feminine way, of thinking. Wisdom being the feminine of the creation of God. You know what I'm saying? Just knowledge. So, along your life, and I know I'm just going to talk about myself, I had to go through these personality traits or these archetypes. So, and many of us don't want to admit that, within our thinking and our psyche, to survive, because we were taught survival. You came up with different egos. When I was small, when I said cowboys and the Indians, when I felt like I was defeated, I felt like I got stronger. So, can you imagine? Because I watched the Cowboys and the Indians, and that gave me a certain kind of power. If I was playing backyard football or WW wrestling when I was small, so Cowboys and the Indians, that was my phrase, my mantra to get me stronger, just like Popeye eating spinach. So, as I got older, I started to recognize Cowboys and the Indians weren't going to make it, you're 13 and 14, 15 and 16, 17 and 18, it dies out. Something fictional has to become you. You have to, get in with society and all those around you who have those street names, right? So 6'4". Though that was my height at the time, I didn't know. I took on the name of 6'4", and that street name, that ego, that archetype took me down a road of experience that I have never, but I had to experience, never thought I could experience, because it gave me courage. Another alter ego. So people in my hometown, that grew up in the street in the time era that I grew up in, they knew me as a 6'4". And that person, that character type was built, from the street. You know what I'm saying? From the things and the knowledge and the wisdom of the streets, from dope boys to older men to older women, just philosophy and knowledge about the street and life knowledge. When you go to church, you have to be delivered from those, they say. But once you deliver from them when you're adults in adult classes, you understand and learn that those archetypes and those personas, give you courage in different places that you didn't already think that you had. So, because guess what? 6'4", or what they call 64, now, in meaning of numerology, as it concerns myself, means a building and foundation and wealth for purpose for your family. So that's nothing to be ashamed of. But there's two sides to the coin. So I had to see both sides, because that was a part of my program. That was part of my program. And also, so I know this to be true. When you go through life, finding jobs, and I'm just going to be real and put it out there. You change when you go in the work field if you're around a certain denomination. And I'm just going to say the Caucasian denomination. A lot of us, I was called Sean or Sean. And you know what Sean or Sean brought out of me? It brought in the fear, insecure person, the person that had to get up under and, be in a way of submission. submission to the workforce, the yes or no sir mentality, the yes or no sir master mentality. Yet and still, it was needed because I had to learn the workforce in places I never have been as a salesman. As a salesman. Now, you may call it Uncle Thomas or whatever what you do when you change your voice or whatever you have to do in the work field, but so that's not actually all incorrect. That's being correct in your speaking in this literature or grammar of what we call the English vocabulary. So that's how the world understands it. And they do expect you to articulate what you're saying and to express what you're saying in a way that they can understand it. Though they will flip the script and keep on strolling on their pages. I've been a witness to myself. So the characteristics of Sean, was needed. Sean or Sean. And now you always hear me say at the end of my videos, this is Shontavian. Because that's what my grandmother named me. That's the program that understands it all. And though I hear it from myself, out in the ways when I was with people, certain people couldn't meet this side of Shontavian. They had to meet a 6'4". And then certain people couldn't meet 6'4". They had to meet a Sean. And then they could not meet a Sean. They had to meet a Sean. All these archetypes for this one human being. And I know it seems sort of crazy and mundane that we continue to characterize ourselves in order to be surviving in life, not winning. So guess what, family? Shontavian Payne wins. Because I know the soul and I know and understand why those archetypes was needed, and not to be delivered from, but delivered into something more than yourself. Yes, delivered from those ways. Yes, because whether you feel it or not, it has an effect on you. Your evil, what you call your own personal evil soul. Not no one else's. It's your own personal evil. It's not no one else's figmentation of it or definition of it. It's your personal belief of it. That's what gives it power. So when you're older, ladies, and gentlemen, and you're dating someone like a 6'4", think about it. What archetype are you entertaining? And why are you there in your mindset of wanting to be in relation with it? Because you're looking at somebody else in you that's an archetype. You may be called, Sweet Juju or whatever your name is as a female and need a 6'4", but actually you need a Shontavian or you need a Coretta or whatever your name is, if you can understand the meaning of what I'm trying to get you to see. Because if you're dating a 6'4", you're wondering, now what does that actually mean? Yeah, and you can look in the street and say that's something to be proud of if you want to stay at that level in life. But when you're beyond life and into the soul and into the eternal, you want to understand a Shontavian and far beyond, or whoever you were named by the program, or your mother or father, or whoever named you. So the adult programming, if you're with me, type in the comments that you agree at some point, that we have to get it together. So we have to get it together and understand eternalness of this dimension. God, the giver of dimension in this realm. This is Shontavian Payne. Man, I love y'all in the soul. That's 100, yo. That's 100. A lot of us say this. Shout out 19 Keys. I'm about to start dropping names up in here, y'all. Shout out 19 Keys, y'all. Go on. I've been following him from years, yo. Shout out for 19 Keys. Shout out to Papa Duck. You know what I'm saying? I'm name dropping. Shout out to Machiavelli. Shout out to Nietzsche. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Carl Jung. Shout out to Gustav Jung. You know what I mean? Yeah. Shout out to Shontavian Payne. I love y'all in the soul, man. We poppin', baby. I'm out of here.